Hey guys, it's Andrew. Not sure you recognize the character I'm hanging out with this morning, but this is Captain Cook. I know. Most people associate Captain Cook with Australia, New Zealand, let's not kid ourselves, even Antarctica. Right? And oftentimes when we bring guests here, because everybody recognizes the name, it's a great handle. But people, when they realize that he's here, even ourselves as Newfoundlanders, we're more apt again, right? Instead of taking credit and recognizing why he was here, right? We're apt to deflect it. We'll say, oh yeah, it was the great work that he did here. That was what got him his commissions in Australia. And then we'll go on to talk to you about the work that he did in other parts of the world. But this last little while, I've started to pay a lot more attention to what it was that Captain Cook did. And look, they've got a beautiful new display up here, and I certainly recommend that anybody, especially local people, get up and have a look at this sort of stuff, because this guy's work is really quite exceptional. See, Cook was a cartographer, and what he invented was I think it's called a plane table. And again, when you look at old maps, not just of Newfoundland, but of the world, boy, they're not very good. And all of a sudden, Captain James Cook, he's here in 1762, by the way. And I'll get to the significance of that in a second. But he comes here and he starts making these maps that, guys, we have used right up until basically the invention of GPS. Is these maps were not only were they so intricate and so accurate, but they were also so incredibly detailed. The man took incredible depth samples. I mean, it was really, really quite the undertaking. And up until recently, never really gave it a whole lot of thought. Captain Cook spent 5 years here. 5 years going back and forth across the Atlantic Ocean. And by the way, that's a story unto itself. But he spent 5 years coming out of here. His first work, where he gained his first notoriety, was mapping the Gulf of St. Lawrence, right? It was the end of the 7 Years' War. Remember now, the 1700s, right? Basically from 1696, when d'Iberville comes out of New France, comes out of Quebec City, marches on Schenectady, goes into Maine, lands in Placentia, starts in Fairyland, and rages war against all of America. And when I say America, I mean America. Basically from 1696 until 1762. And it finally ends, and has a lot to do with this guy on account of the fact that he did such an effective job of mapping the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is a very difficult seaway even to this very day. It allowed the British to make those final assaults and to finally conquer what they would call New France, right? Now the next 5 years he spends in Newfoundland, and it wasn't until recently, when you think about it, France has been fighting for 100 years now, right? Fighting for Canada, fighting for North America. And when they're driven out of it, the only thing that they want for, the only concession that they ask for, or is it, okay, yeah, we're going to leave. But the only thing they asked for was a fishing coastline in Newfoundland. Right, in yesterday's video, when we were on about the railway, we were talking about the amount of wealth that Newfoundland had. You gotta recognize, guys, the importance of Newfoundland's cod fishery. Because like I said yesterday, we were feeding the world, right? And as much as the French were willing to give up, they could give up that fur trade. They could give up the timber, they could give up all of the resources in Canada. But the one thing that there was no way they could relinquish the right, the ability to fish for Newfoundland's cod. Remember, guys, this is a time before refrigeration. Again, when you're thinking about history, you really got to put yourself in that period of time, and you got to recognize there's no refrigerators. There's no way for you to preserve your protein, right? To make certain that it doesn't go bad. You know what fish is like, right? Well, cod, and of course the beautiful thing about cod, right, has the idyllic combination of fat and oil. When you salt it, you dry it, you lay it out, it is preserved, and it is perfectly preserved forever and a day. The French needed this. The Portuguese needed it, the Spanish needed it, the Basque needed it. Everybody needed it. But this was the one concession of all the things that Canada had in its possession. The one thing that the French couldn't give up was their access to Newfoundland, or to codfish. Let's not even bring Newfoundland into the equation at this point. Just to codfish. And the concession that they were granted was a French fishing shoreline. The original shoreline ran from Cape Bonavista all the way to Point Riche. But when Cook was brought here in 1762 and spent 5 years mapping the French shoreline in Newfoundland, it was a readjusted shoreline that ran from Cape St. John all the way to Cape Ray. It's one of the reasons when you land in a ferry in Newfoundland, you land in Port-aux-Basques. Not because Port-aux-Basques is such a great port. It's the first port that extends beyond the French shore, because the French held that shore from 1762, when this cat was here mapping, right up until 1904. Can you believe that? Right? It's why we have such a wonderful French history. Why you have such unusual, unique dialects out here. It's why we have the expression jacquot-terre. All comes back to the reliance on that codfish, on the ability to dry and salt and preserve protein to be able to feed your population, right? And this guy over here, Captain James Cook. By the way, just as a side note, and to end this, because I am going to remind you in a second before I forget to sign up for our podcast, or not our podcast, what do we call it? Subscribe to our channel, as my cousin David says. We are the Urban Baymen, and just want to leave you with this about Captain Cook. Here's a very unknown attribute or claim that Captain James Cook can make. The name for the penguins. Remember I said he was in New Zealand, he was in Australia, he was also in Antarctica, and he named the birds, those flightless birds, penguins, which they're not, right? He took that name from Newfoundland. It's the great auk, one of the last species of animals that we know of on the planet that is undeniably without any, there's no way around it, all right? They are extinct, and we are responsible for it. Apologies all the way around. But they were of the genus penguine, the original penguin. And they were a flightless bird that walked like this. You'd find them out on the Funk Islands. Fed an awful lot of sailors that landed over here years ago. But when Cook finally makes it to Antarctica and he gets down there and he sees very, very similar flightless birds to our great auk, he goes, oh geez, yeah, they got penguins too. And thus the name penguin, comes from Newfoundland, was later applied in Antarctica. Here's your lesson for the day, guys. I hope you're enjoying these. I hope again I'll remind you to subscribe and look forward to staying in contact with you. Thanks. Bye-bye.